All right, guys, today we're going to talk about Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. I've seen this argument on Twitter many times. People getting angry and saying things that are hurtful to each other. Today we're going to talk about that and who I would pick if I had to pick between Jokic or Embiid. And if you like it, share it with your buddies on other channels. All right, let's get started. All right, the argument between Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic has just gotten hotter and hotter online as both players have become two of the best centers in the NBA. Both of them have similar styles in some aspects and then much more unique styles in others, and we're going to look at both of those styles and decide who's the better player. When you look at Joel Embiid, you're looking at a player that plays a smash mouth style inside, but actually complements it with a nice outside game. Some surprisingly good passing and an ability to get to the rim. Joel Embiid averages 23.4 points, 11.8 rebounds, 3.1 assists, 47% from the field, and 34% from three. I was actually surprised when I was looking at these statistics this season that Joel Embiid, 34.8%, that's almost 35% from three. That's almost above league average three-point shooting there for Joel Embiid. I was actually surprised because a lot of defenses allow Joel Embiid to shoot that three because they know that if they get up on him, he combines a quickness with his size that's pretty scary for defenders. When he goes to the rim and he's got space to work, he's almost unstoppable. And so a lot of defenses will allow him to shoot the three. But this last season, Joel Embiid has been knocking down that three-point shot at a higher clip. And when he's doing that, he's nearly unstoppable as a scoring option. Because when he's at the rim, he is just a physical force. And his ability to bully other centers and get a soft touch and put the ball in the hoop is really impressive. Nikola Jokic, his stats are pretty interesting. He has a higher field goal percentage, 52%. Jokic scores 20.2 points per game, 10.2 rebounds, but also 6.9 assists per game, just under 7 assists. And that's a 31% three-point shot. I was actually surprised. If you asked someone between Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic who has the higher three-point percentage, I think a lot of people would have just said off the top of their heads Nikola Jokic. But Joel Embiid has a higher three-point percentage from Nikola Jokic. Jokic has those 7 assists per game, and he does it with a lower percentage. So he's doing that a lot of this from the top of the key. He's an incredible passer in terms of being able to find cutters to the rim. He's a great back-to-the-basket player, and you see that in that 52% field goal percentage. His ability to have soft touch around the rim is really, really good, and it's 5 percentage points higher than Joel Embiid. That's another one of those things. If you asked, hey, who scores more on their field goal percentage around the rim, you'd have a lot of people saying, oh, it's probably Joel Embiid with his size, but it's actually Nikola Jokic. He has an incredibly impressive soft touch around the rim that he combines with that big body. Now, we saw that Nikola Jokic has actually lost a lot of weight. It will be interesting to see in this Orlando bubble how he does with that skinnier body. Is he still able to bully guys and score? Or is he going to be a quicker player and things like that? It's going to be actually pretty fascinating to see how Nikola Jokic looks when he has that skinnier body in Orlando. Will that help him or hurt him? Because right now, that big body really helps him get close to the rim, and then he uses that soft touch to score. So both players, their raw numbers are great. Have earned them spots on the All-Star team and all NBA spots, and are going to be getting those spots for years to come. You probably give a tiny bit of edge to Joel Embiid because of the defensive numbers. The 1.7 blocks per game, and he's had seasons where he's been over 2 blocks per game. He's an incredible rim protector. Probably a very slight edge to Joel Embiid just in terms of the raw numbers and the points per game. I mean, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic are both, you could argue, the focal points of their offenses, and they are getting the ball and they are being asked to score points or create points. For Nikola Jokic, he's creating those points with his assists. It's a heavy load, and so that those percentages for Joel Embiid are not quite as high because he's getting that ball at the basket, and that's tough to do. Although Nikola Jokic, at the same time, you could argue that he's getting those same responsibilities and he's doing better things with it. Those assists really help out the other players on the floor, obviously. So probably a slight edge for Joel Embiid when you include the defensive numbers, but that's really, really close. The next thing you have to talk about when you talk about Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid, I guess, is that you have to talk about the advanced analytics. Nikola Jokic is one of the national media's favorite players in terms of just advanced stats and what he does on the floor when he's on, what he does for other players while he's on the floor. So one of the advanced stats I like to look at for different players is how good are you when I'm on the floor compared to when I'm off? Are you better when I'm on the floor? Because that's probably the most basic way to define what makes a great player. When LeBron James is on the floor, every team he's ever been on is just vastly better on offense and defense. Defense when he's trying. But when Nikola Jokic is on the floor, the Denver Nuggets are 6.9 points better on offense when he's on the floor than when he's off. So that's just a huge number that they are typically scoring 7 more points than the other team while he's on the floor. The defense with Nikola Jokic is actually an interesting thing to look at. They're 0.6 points worse when Nikola Jokic is on the floor in defense than when he's in offense. So if you do the math, they are better when Nikola Jokic is on the floor, and that's why they've won so many games. So the offense just outweighs that defense. And the defense is actually not that bad. When you look at, 0.6 points worse, that's very low. And when you consider the offense that he brings to you, typically they are outscoring their opponents at a high level and enough to make up for the defensive deficiencies, which are not honestly that much. You could argue with the defense that the Nuggets have done a really good job of building their team around Nikola Jokic. He might have a better team makeup than Joel Embiid, just that complements his skills. They've put shooters around him and shooters that can guard the ball. So you've got players like Gary Harris, who's a great defender, who's also a good offensive player. I know this last season Gary Harris has struggled a little bit overall, but typically he's been a good defender. Torrey Craig and Paul Millsap, also great players. Paul Millsap has incredible on-court, off-court numbers. When Paul Millsap is on the floor, the Denver Nuggets are a better team, especially defensively. And so they've put defensive players around Nikola Jokic to kind of make up for his defensive deficiencies while also maximizing his offense. He's fantastic in terms of advanced analytics. When you look at Joel Embiid, the Philadelphia, it's interesting. We're going to look at these and talk about everything. The Philadelphia 76ers, when Joel Embiid is on the floor offensively, are 4 points worse than the opponents they play. And this is over the season. So this is an average over the season. It's not like every single night. There will be differences every single night. But on average over the season, they're 4 points 4 points worse than their opponent when Joel Embiid is on the floor. On defense, they are 8 points better. 8 points. So they have a +4 net rating, whereas Nikola Jokic has a +6 or 7 because of his offense. It's really interesting to me, that offensive number, though, that they're 4 points worse. And I think what you could argue with that is that team makeup for Philadelphia is not great, because you've got Ben Simmons, who doesn't shoot threes at all, and Joel Embiid, who's more of an inside-outside player, typically plays inside but can shoot the three and drive to the rim. But what that does is that is such a funky offense in Philadelphia, and you could argue their coach is not all that great either, has not been able to find a way to make those two players coalesce very well, and that could be why that offense isn't quite as good. What happens if you have a better spread floor around Joel Embiid? Does that number jump up? Probably. But that 8 points better on defense is what makes Philadelphia so dangerous, and dangerous in the playoffs, because defense does win championships, and we've seen that the Philadelphia 76ers were one Kawhi Leonard bucket from being able to go to the NBA Finals, or at least compete to go there and face the Bucks. But one shot, and that is all it took to beat them. They were honestly, in a lot of ways, the better team against Kawhi Leonard, who was just the better player, probably arguably the best player in the league. But that defense is what helped them almost win that series, and it was just not quite good enough. And you could argue that if they had a different team makeup, they probably beat Toronto pretty easily if they had more shooting around Joel Embiid. So the advanced analytics probably give the nod to Nikola Jokic there, where the raw stats go to Embiid. The advanced analytics probably go to Nikola Jokic, but that defensive stuff from Joel Embiid is really impressive. That is stuff that really affects everything on the floor. And remember, 50% of the game is defense. Just like offense, 50% of the game is decided on the defensive end. Can you get stops when you need them? And so, of these two guys, who would I pick? My pick, and who I think is probably overall the better player, is Joel Embiid. And the reason that I picked Joel Embiid is because I feel like Joel Embiid can be placed on any team in the league, and that team can work with him and win games. I think Joel Embiid actually, because of the weird fit with Ben Simmons and how it just hasn't quite worked out perfectly, they've added some shooters to that team like Tobias Harris. And in past seasons, they've had J.J. Redick. That's been an important part of their team because of the ability to hit shots. But because that's such a funky fit, and when they're in the playoffs and Ben Simmons has to sit in the dunker spot, how is Joel Embiid supposed to flourish around that? How is he supposed to score and do the things that he does when you've got such a bad spacing on the floor compared to Nikola Jokic, who, when he's on the floor, he's able to punish opposing centers, especially weak ones, because of that spread floor. What would Joel Embiid do with the same spread floor that Nikola Jokic has gotten? Or let's say you replace Ben Simmons with an elite guard that can get him the ball in pick and roll or space the floor for Joel Embiid so that he can dominate opposing centers. It would be a different story. And we know that Joel Embiid can pass the ball. He's not a black hole like Hassan Whiteside, who gets the ball and just shoots it. He actually spreads that ball around a lot. But a lot of times the best option for the Sixers is just giving the ball to Joel Embiid and let him dominate inside. If he had a spread floor where if they came to double team him, he would find open shooters on the perimeter, and you can see that with the 3 assists per game. If he had a point guard that could shoot the ball, setting him up, his points per game and his just effect on the game would go even better. And I promise you that offensive production for the Sixers would get even better. Now, if the coach could figure it out, I don't know. Guys, that's all I've got tonight. I hope that you let me know in the comments what you thought. If you have anything to say, let me know. I will read it. Just be nice to me. Guys, like and subscribe to this channel. I will talk to you later.